Hello, my name is George. This is GLLR Cars. Welcome. Today we're talking the 2019 Ford Mustang. This Ford Mustang is a 2019 model that is the Ecoboost Premium Convertible. So Ecoboost in that it is the 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. It is premium in that it has some premium components like leather seats and navigation and things of that nature. Well, not navigation, but the bigger screen without the maps, because that's another option. And then convertible. So again, it's a little bit of a tongue twister to have all that, but it's a very good model. The Ford Mustang is a very iconic car. It is a car that it has a lot of name recognition. It has a lot of popularity, not just in the US but overseas. If you look at a Ford Mustang, not only is it just so undistinguishable in terms of what you expect in terms of the DNA, but this is one of those few cars that if you look around, the actual name Mustang, you're not going to find on the car anywhere. Yet, most people know from the galloping pony that that is a Mustang. So, when you have a car that is so popular that you don't need to put its name anywhere, you know you have a very successful product. It's a very historic car. It's a car that has been around a very long time and has gone through many changes, and this look of this car has been fairly unchanged, I would say, since the year 2015 when they came up with this generation from the previous generation. And since 2015 the changes have been fairly subtle. The nose of the car and the grille are a little bit slimmer, a little bit more narrow. The ground effects and these, I guess this like this angle that they did here where it has this kind of a look that maybe changes it a little bit. Some people think is the Darth Vader look or whatnot, but it's also been fairly good. The fog lights are no longer round, and they made them where they're the long strip of light, and the LCDs inside these long curve lights, which are very narrow with the round LCDs inside, is a very good look. I also like something what they did here where they have these hood vents here. Makes it look more aggressive. The proportions, and I know that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but the proportions of this car, and what I mean with proportions is the height of the car compared to the length of the car compared to the width of the car, are absolutely gorgeous. This car is a beauty, no doubt about it, and it is unquestionable the reason why many people like a Mustang. It is because of the looks of this car. It is a gorgeous car. If we look around, and again, this convertible model will be slightly, even with the top up, usually cars that are convertible will have a top that makes it look not as good, but even this car with the top up, it still has a very good appealing look. So the curves, already talked about the ground effects in the front. You also have them here on the side, little side skirts over there. In the back, again, this is not one of the GT models where it's going to have more like diffusers and things of that nature here. You still have the dual exhaust, and then that light in the middle is the backup light. For a convertible, and I have a lot of junk in the trunk, there is a button underneath here that you can hit, or you can use the keys. Plenty of space for a convertible. If you look at that rollerboard, it goes way back there, so a lot of space there. And in the interior, one of the things that you will see, by the way, before I go into the interior, it has the mechanism where you can put your hand in there and lock it, or you can touch in this area right here to lock it, and then the hand to unlock it. I stand corrected. Then, because it's a it doesn't have frames on the windows. It does lower the window a little bit. The interior of the car, this one with the leather seats, and again, my driving position is pretty far back, and with this chair all the way down, it is still a good position, a good view. If you ever need to get into the back, I like to flip this manual flip here. The back area is not really meant for folks to ride in the back unless there's a very small person and a very brief ride or a very short drive. It's more for like emergency purposes. And so that's in terms of the interior. These chairs only have the lumbar support button and then the one to slide the entire chair forward or back. Looking at the interior, first thing, let's start the car, press the brake and hit engine start. One thing that I notice is here I have the windows up, the top up, the car's closed up, and the engine, for a 4-cylinder engine, it sounded unlike a 4-cylinder engine. I've driven 6-cylinder engines that don't sound like this. So if I lower the windows and I flip this up here, just to we have an idea of what, you know, having the top up would be, and then I can move the slider back. It moves the top up completely, and it's fairly fast. I didn't do a count, but that could have been, keep me honest here, in the neighborhood of 7 to 8 seconds. And it's fairly quick, and it's again, very open, very functional interior. The gauges are very big and in your face. One of the things that you will notice, there's actually a theme to this. The reason why you see something called ground speed on the gauges, and it's got like this cylinder that wraps around the speedometer, or even the tachometer. It has the cylinder like that. It's somewhat of an aviator theme, and the aviator theme is to make it mimic some of that of an airplane, where there is your airspeed and then you have your ground speed. So obviously in a car, airspeed does not apply, so they use ground speed in the gauges. Just a little tip there in case you're wondering where that came from. The center area here has gauges that are configurable, and here in the steering wheel you have buttons where you can go to the left to select the area that you want to show and which gauge you want to be able to look at. Let's say I select oil pressure, and I don't know, the oil pressure is okay there, or I can look at air temperature, cylinder head temperature, etc. If I go now to a little further back and I look at the trip and fuel, select that category, I can look at my fuel economy the last 30 minutes. It shows me trip computer, where you get to look at, you know, at least 4 different criteria for trip 1 and trip 2, etc. So I normally like to keep it in the gauge mode, and the air fuel ratio boost is the one that I like to show. Excuse the sound in the back, but I'm nearby a train station and there's a train going by here. Looking back at some of the other basics here, you have your air conditioning controls, which it does have the rotating round controls. I've always liked these controls because you can literally point the air in any direction you want. So you can go almost 90 degrees up to 90 degrees down to almost all the way to the left. Again, I always like these. Maybe for some folks it doesn't appeal as much as the square ones, but I really do like this design, and more than anything, not because of the looks, but because of the functionality. I've talked in other videos about the sync system, Sync 3, and it's got mobile apps. Well, in this case I haven't enabled them, but it has, if I go to home, it has 3 sections that you get to choose. This particular one, when I select what normally would be the navigation mode, this one doesn't happen to do anything, but it would normally show navigation, but there is no navigation in this particular one. So because it does have Android Auto, excuse me, or Apple CarPlay, I can connect, in this case, an iPhone, and it will show me the iPhone screen there. AC controls can be controlled from the climate buttons, and you have a little bit more functionality, but I like the fact that it still does show the ability to do it here from the manual buttons. The seats have cool seats, and it has warm seats, both passenger and driver. And that's pretty much about it in terms of that. When it looks at storage, got standard there for your glove compartment, sorry. If you're looking at cup holders, standard cup holders with the little tabs there that will show, you know, you'll be able to have something of a smaller drink. And if you're looking for a center console, there is a fairly generous center console for a small car. There are one USB connector, and there is a 12-volt connector there as well. So handbrake here, I guess one thing that many car makers are doing is the parking brake is being made electronic. Not so on the Mustang yet, and I would expect that to change fairly soon. But again, very functional, very easy to get to everything, and this design has worked for Ford for quite a bit. The only thing I would recommend is that they do an update, even if it's subtle, to the interior, just as they've been doing to the exterior. First impressions are related to the feel of the wheel and the connection with the road. It is very well connected, and this feeling is determined by the settings that one can do for the different modes. So look right here, there are a number of buttons. This area right here where you get to set the mode for whether it's sports mode, eco mode, or sports plus, normal mode. It has the right here, that second button right there is for the steering wheel, how stiff the steering can get, as well as how tight the transmission can get. So it's very pleasant to know that that level of customization on your ability to change how stiff or soft the wheel is, how tight the car will feel. And oh, by the way, I stand corrected. That button, that third button right here, is for. So the first one on the right is the mode, whether sports mode or normal, etc., sports plus. The second one is for the steering wheel. That third one is for slipping, so it'll have the slip control that you can disable, which I don't recommend it. And then the last button is for the hazard lights, not to mention the start-stop engine. So again, it does allow you a very good level of customizing how you want to drive the car. In terms of the driving experience, is the acceleration. So this is a 4-cylinder car that has that is turbocharged, is what Ford calls the Ecoboost engine, and it has 310 horsepower. What I like about this engine is that the torque on the engine is not on the high revs, it is on the lower revs, not as low as you would find like on a truck. I know that Ford has tweaked this engine for the Ford Ranger, but for a sports car, it's actually pretty adequate. If I'm driving here, cruising along, and as you can see, other cars are passing me, and I just punch it a little bit. Right there, I feel two things. First of all, I feel that it immediately punch you. It'll punch you back. So you're not waiting for the turbo to engage, but it's going to punch you back at the minute that you floor it. And then the turbo kicks in, and then you feel another boost of power that comes your way when you do that, and you're just cruising down the road. It's the layout of the dashboard, the instrument cluster, the infotainment system. It is a good layout. The way that Ford did it, by the way, over in the instrument cluster, there is an option to where this whole thing is an LCD screen and your gauges are basically digital. The instrument cluster is, it has Apple CarPlay, it has Android Auto, and it has the sync system, and it's also very good. And with the Sync System 3, which is the one that it has, it is easy to navigate, it is fast, so no complaints there. The one comment that I do have is that it has not changed for at least the look and feel for at least 5 years. The 2015 Mustang already looked pretty much the way of this layout that you're seeing today. Some of the only change from 2015 to 2016 was that the sync system went from sync version 2 to sync version 3. So this basically was the color-coded screen, and that's the biggest change that took place. So what does that tell me that it's been like that for at least 5 years? Is that in the eyes of any consumer who at least has owned a Mustang in the past, and that includes yours truly, it becomes a little bit dated. If we look at the creature comforts and the overall comfort of the vehicle, one thing that makes the Mustang stand out over the other American muscle cars is the visibility and the view. So for a sports car, the seating position, so I have the chair in the lowest setting, so I can raise this chair up much higher. So this is as low as the chair is going to get. And my view out the window is, and by the way, I have the visor on, so if I flip the visor up, that is my eye position. It is clearly above the steering wheel, above the hood, in a very clear, good view. And again, this is a convertible. So a convertible will normally have a few blind spots in the quarter rear sides of the car. And that's probably the only thing that will be different from a regular coupe that will not have in the corners back there those small blind spots there. But the view is quite good. You sit significantly higher above the dash and significantly higher above the steering wheel. Having driven the car, it was without question a joy to drive because of the feel of the engine, the connection with the road, and the fact that the car makes no excuses for being more loud, like it doesn't try to be subtle. For a 4-cylinder engine, it has a good sound and a good feel. The power of a Ecoboost 4 is quite adequate and surprising, to be honest. This car has enough power and has enough punch to compete with many 6-cylinders out there. It is not a light car. It does feel like it could be a little bit more nimble, especially with a 4-cylinder engine, but it does a good job of pushing the car. The comfort and the looks of the car are very pleasing, and even though a Ford Mustang is very common, at least in the US, it is still a looker. It is still the kind of car that many people look around and say, it's a nice car. And they've been around since, keep me honest here, around 60s. I may put the actual date in the video of when they've been around, but they've been around for a little bit. And since they've been around, they've been successful at trying to innovate and trying to keep that driving excitement in the hands of the driver. So this is a driver's car. Somebody who enjoys driving and being engaged with the road, this is the car for you. This one being convertible, again, it just depends on what people like. The convertible experience, if you have the weather for it and you enjoy the open road, it is a very good car. Convertibles are not as popular nowadays as they used to be, but it's still a very good choice. And the fact that they still offer a convertible, that Ford is still doing this with the Mustang, means that they're still committed for even the select drivers that enjoy that experience. The Mustang is a competitor to the likes of the Dodge Challenger and the Chevy Camaro. And although these cars get compared quite a bit, without any question, it is all about which is the one that you prefer, which is the one that you like, whether it's the looks, the performance, the feel, the comfort, the size, you name it. The formula is not perfect. And like I said before, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And if if you do think that this car is a beauty, then this is the car for you. Ford Mustang is a very affordable car. They come with this model, which is the 4-cylinder engine, and starts in the neighborhood of about $23,000 to $26,000, going up into the mid 40s if you're getting a Ford Mustang GT with all the bells and whistles on it. So a very, very affordable car, and depending on the price point and what features one is willing to get, it is a car that, let's say that for whatever reason you cannot afford a new one, you can get a used one in the used market for less than $20,000. And this is a car that will be at least fairly loaded, maybe not a GT model with the V8 engine, but fairly loaded. So you can't go wrong if you're looking for a car like this that you can afford and that you can enjoy driving. And if storage space is not the concern, then this 2019 Ford Mustang can check probably the most important of all the boxes that one looks to check whenever you're shopping for a car, and that is, would I be excited and engaged when driving a car? That's the box that this car checks. My name is George. This is GLLR Cars, and as always, drive safe.